Hey, what's going on everyone? It's Griffin here, and I hope you're all having a great day as always. Now, yesterday, which was February 4th, Lightspeed POS released their fiscal Q3 earnings, and as a shareholder myself for now roughly 1 year, combined with the fact that dozens of viewers asked me to make this video, well, today we're going to be quickly going over Lightspeed's Q3 earnings, and I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on whether or not this stock is still a buy at the current price point. By the way, I did mention Lightspeed in a video I released last week going over some stock updates that I hold in my portfolio, and I mentioned it to buy in just before earnings because I had a strong feeling that the stock price would rise leading up to and just after earnings, which it did happen to do so. So make sure that you subscribe to the channel if you want to stay up to date with all my content related to stock market investing. Also, if you're new to investing, make sure to check out the links down below to resources that I use and recommend in my daily investing, and for a limited time you can get $25 for free when you sign up for a Wealthsimple trade account. So with that said, let's get right into today's video covering Lightspeed's Q3 earnings. Alright, so jumping into this company's quote here, their ticker symbol is LSPD on both the Toronto Stock Exchange as well as the New York Stock Exchange. But for this video, we'll be focusing on the Canadian version since this is a Canadian company. But do note that all the financial figures that we'll be looking over in their income statement and balance sheet are actually reported in US dollars. So as mentioned though, they did release earnings on February 4th, and leading up to this, I had spoken about LSPD at the end of January when it was trading at around $85 per share and had been trending sideways for the better part of December and January, as we can see from their stock chart. Now, leading up to and on earnings though, the stock price did end up jumping roughly 15%, so a nice little spread there for anyone who bolstered their position as of last week, and the stock even broke $100 per share for the first time ever as of yesterday on the 4th, which is crazy for those of you who have been invested since early 2020 when I first spoke about this company and shares were trading for below $30 a piece. Let's keep in mind though that at current all-time high valuations, this has also inflated certain ratios for this stock. For example, the price to sales ratio based on the trailing 12 months of sales is around 68x, and that's extremely high even for the Canadian tech space, other than say Shopify that has a price to sales ratio of around 85x, but that is considering the trailing 12 months, and as we're about to see here, they've had a fantastic quarter in terms of top line, and this will have driven down by a couple points their price to sales based on the trailing 12 months with this new quarter included. But let's now dig a little bit deeper into the company's financials to see whether or not they did indeed have their best ever quarter as I had expected it to be, and as a result whether or not the current share price is somewhat justified based on expected growth throughout 2021. So straight off the bat, as I had expected, we're seeing a stellar top line growth for Lightspeed in the recent quarter at $57.6 million, which represents an increase of 79% year over year. And even compared to the previous quarter where revenues were $45.5 million, this is quarter over quarter growth of 26.6%, which further solidifies my point in that previous update video that retail and restaurant businesses are really looking anywhere they can to integrate better POS and curbside pickup into their business models, which Lightspeed is focusing on and can monetize in multiple different points of the sales experience. In fact, this is a company that makes most of their revenue from subscription-based software services for their entire POS package, and then they also make money on every single transaction that flows through their platform as a cut they take on the top line revenue. Speaking of transactions through their systems though, gross transaction volume, meaning all the sales that were generated through Lightspeed systems, grew by 48% year over year to $9.1 billion in sales for Q3, which is really impressive growth. Now, the main revenue sources did account for $52.5 million in the recent quarter, which was also an increase of 85% year over year. This is honestly the type of growth that I am thrilled to see as a shareholder because it demonstrates that they're capitalizing on the current market environment and they're shifting the way they do things in order to generate more top line revenue. This revenue figure even exceeded the company's own guidance figures, which was in the range of $44 to $47 million. So recent revenues completely smashed through the company's own projections. Now, a couple more things I want to mention here regarding Lightspeed's income for this previous quarter is the revenues of ShopKeep and Upserve, which are appearing for the first time on this company's income statement because these are companies that have been acquired by Lightspeed during the last fiscal quarter. As we can see from this chart, Lightspeed's core business generated $49.3 million in the quarter, which as a side note is still $2 million above their guidance. But regardless, ShopKeep and Upserve added a combined $8.3 million to the company's top line, representing around 15% of the company's total revenues. And what I like most about these business acquisitions is that these are companies that operate mainly in the US market. So by having acquired these two companies, Lightspeed is able to have a larger foothold in the American market and expand their customer network. And I do expect the revenues from these two sub-companies to continue ramping at a rapid pace. ShopKeep is a leading cloud-based retail commerce platform that is in over 20,000 locations, and Upserve is a cloud-based restaurant management software company that is active in more than 7,000 locations across the United States. Other really important business news for the company that was announced this quarter is the introduction of the Lightspeed supplier network, which will allow LSPD's merchants to connect with suppliers to facilitate their supply chain if sending packages. Now, while this won't necessarily have as much of an impact on Lightspeed's software sales, it will allow merchants to better service their e-commerce clients, thus shipping out inventory more seamlessly and generating higher payment processing revenues. And finally, in parallel to strong financial growth, let's also speak about the actual growth in customer locations that are using Lightspeed's POS software. As we can see here, total customer locations has grown from 66,000 just 1 year back to now around 115,000 in the most recent quarter. This is directly impacting the company's top line right now, but also in the future as they'll be able to upsell their customers on more products in their ecosystem, such as what Shopify does. Really, the only downside in Lightspeed's past quarter is their significant net loss at $42.651 million, which was directly associated with higher than ever operating expenses, which totaled $77.8 million. So Lightspeed is still far from being profitable, but this is not their main focus as of right now anyways. Rather, they're looking to grow and expand as quickly as possible and capitalize on the current market environment so that they can capture as many new customers as possible, which will be beneficial to them right now, but also in the future as they're able to upsell more of their products. This is, however, something to keep an eye on as an investor, but considering their explosive top-line revenue growth, this is something that I somewhat expected for the quarter. Alright, so let's now jump into Lightspeed's balance sheet as of the last quarter. So current assets of $278.758 million, $232 million of which is in cash and cash equivalents. And the company has only $117 million in current liabilities, placing their current ratio at a nice 2.37. Now, in terms of the company's total assets, they do have $1.546 billion in assets, but to mention here is that they have reported just under $1 billion in goodwill from the ShopKeep and Upserve acquisitions, and these are soft assets that have little to no value. Even at that though, the company does have enough cash to fully cover their liabilities if they wanted to, which, let's be honest, they're not going to do, but it's still important to mention. So all in all, Lightspeed's balance sheet as of the most recent quarter is completely fine as I had expected. And finally, Lightspeed is projecting increased rapid growth of their top line as they have given revenue guidance figures for the next quarter between $68 and $70 million, which would be quarter over quarter growth of 21.5% over this most recent quarter. If they manage to continue growing at such a rapid pace for the entirety of 2021, I have no doubt that the stock price will follow and most likely reach above $150 per share in 2021. One of the most important elements to highlight from this recent quarter is that Lightspeed has seen large increases in new customers, which is great to see, even considering the difficulties that small and medium-sized businesses are facing as a result of the pandemic. This is actually somewhat beneficial for Lightspeed, which is a POS system that's offering curbside pickup as well as other alternatives for small to medium-sized businesses. I ended up buying some shares last week right before earnings, and after this short run up, we are seeing a small consolidation today at the time of filming this video, which really doesn't bother me though, because I won't be selling my shares for the foreseeable future. If you're buying in for a mid to long term play, I think Lightspeed still has a lot of running to do, but they'll need to keep up their strong revenue growth and try to limit excess net losses. So that's my take on Lightspeed's most recent earnings. I tried to make this video as quickly as possible and get it out to the audience. Hopefully it provided you some value. If it did, make sure to smash the like button. It really helps the channel out. Also, if you want to learn more about stock market investing, check out my other videos on the channel and subscribe so that you're notified whenever I release new and upcoming content related to investing. Also, make sure to check out the links down in the description to resources that I use and recommend. And on that note, thanks a lot for watching today's video. I'll see you in the next one.